Once your team has selected your topic, you're ready to move forward with your team project. But it is essential to be effective as a team to establish your team norms, figure out who's going to do what, so establishing roles and responsibilities, establishing acceptable communication norms as part of the norming process, setting your goals and objectives as a team, figuring out a conflict management process. How are you going to mitigate conflict if it occurs? And so as part of this overview of the team project details and resources page, I want to go over the team contract template and offer some suggestions and guidance for completing that as a team. So every file that is available on Canvas, you have the option to preview or download. I encourage you to download this document. Someone on your team can be responsible for copying and pasting it into a shared document, such as Google Docs or Microsoft Office 365, or you might want to paste it into a Canvas page, which is essentially like a wiki page that you can all edit there. So figure out the way that works for you guys. You can even have a telephone call and edit it over the phone. You can do a Zoom call and share the screen, whatever works for you. I leave the method that you're going to collaborate completely up to you as a team. The important thing is that you complete this document because it provides you with that foundation for effective teamwork. Establish operating standards and expectations that are essential for your team. So I'm going to preview it here. Here's some rationale about the importance. Your team member roles should be very detailed so people know exactly what their roles are. And then every team has a collective responsibility. And then there's a role that you could have, you don't have to have, called an activity reporter that can help everybody stay on track. If someone isn't quite stepping up and doing things on time, then maybe every week you should have an activity reporter discussions. Maybe those people are actually working behind the scenes, but just didn't think to tell people, and others on the team have a misperception about the work that they are doing. So by having this kind of checks and balances or reporting on this is what I've done, can be essential, especially in a condensed course or in a condensed project timeline, for making sure that everybody stays on course. I do encourage that there is a team communication leader who not only summarizes the weekly activities, what's been accomplished, and keeping people on track. Another important role for the team communication leader is that person can be the point person to communicate with me. So in a large class with people on different teams, if the team has a concern collectively as a team, then one person on the team can represent that team and communicate with me. That way I am communicating with one communication leader on 5 to 7 teams instead of 35 or 40 people who might all have the same question. So by streamlining that and communicating with one individual on your team, maybe they even know the answer, and if they don't, that person can reach out to me. So norms, I've provided a template to get you started. Establish these expectations, what you want from your teammates. You're not limited to these. You don't need to keep all of these. You can look in your textbook. Levi gives us lots of examples and lots of information in the appendix in the rear of the textbook and the back on how to build an effective team contract. There's also information in the early chapters that we've been reading. Just make sure that everyone on the team actually pays attention to these and everyone is aware. And that includes making sure that you don't expect people to adhere to behaviors that you haven't outlined or established in your contract. As you move forward, you should establish a conflict management process. How are you going to handle things when conflict does arise? Now, of course, we're going to learn more about conflict and conflict management as we go forward. We'll also learn more about communications and norms as we go forward. So while you're starting out and you're building this document to submit, to prove to me that as a team you've really thought about things, you've talked about them, you've established these norms that you think are going to be effective for your team, and that's what you will turn in to be graded on in this initial team contract assignment. Please know that your team contract essentially can be thought of as an organic document, because as you learn in the chapter readings is that many norms are established not just based on past experiences on teams that inform our decisions and suggestions for norms, but also some norms arise as you're working together. Perhaps this is the first time you've ever worked together in a virtual environment. So some of the norms and expectations may not come to mind. There might be some things that you just didn't think of when you started. For example, maybe you've got some people on your team that work third shift, got some people that work first shift, some people that are home with small children. So you might need to modify some of your communication expectations, that people don't send texts in the middle of the night while others are sleeping, or people don't expect responses by 8 p.m. when someone is working in that time frame, or when someone is putting their children to bed at that time. So just think about these things. Know that it's okay to change it as ideas, or you recognize as a team that there are other ideas you need to consider in your norms. You can modify or add more steps as needed for the conflict management process, for the norms, and so forth. This one seems to be pretty simple and straightforward. What are your team's goals and objectives? I hope it is to work collaboratively and effectively, following the suggestions and the information that you're learning in this textbook to successfully complete your project. By your timeline, you figure out how you want to target your goal and what are your objectives that you're going to establish to ensure that you reach that goal successfully. Remember that team success isn't just about completing the project. Team success is also a matter of whether or not the team was able to work together effectively to actually complete that task. The last pieces on the page are to establish a timeline. I cannot overemphasize how essential it is to form a timeline. I know these directions ask you to create a graphic. It isn't necessary to have something fancy. I do have. The timeline should be a graphic representation. It's very nice to have a visual. I don't want to burden you with technology challenges if no one on your team is comfortable with making that visual. I mean, there are some templates in PowerPoint. There's some free templates online, some Microsoft templates that you can find. But if you're not comfortable with that, I don't want to overburden you with technology challenges. A bulleted list would be fine. That's still graphically and visually providing your timeline. And so if you do that, just as you prepare it, make sure you're not just copy pasting the course schedule, because your timeline needs to allow into that time management your goals and objectives on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis. Twice a week, maybe you're going to touch base, which is a good idea. In any tight timeline project, there may be touch base on Wednesday and Saturday, or Thursday and Friday, whatever your team establishes, and the deadlines for people to submit their resources to the person who might be the design leader or the research leader, the deadline for people to get their draft of their slide content or their draft of the executive summary content. Have those deadlines well in advance of the course deadline so that you have time to proof it, to edit it, and collaborate together to polish your product. None of this midnight work because somebody didn't get their content to you until well after the deadline. If you establish these team timelines and review them and communicate them on a weekly or twice a week basis with your team, it'll help keep people on target, help keep them responsible and aware of their responsibilities and the deadlines that the team needs everyone to adhere to. Then the very last step of the team contract is to initial this, put your name and your initials and the date to confirm your understanding of these team norms, that you recognize your role, your responsibility, and you agree with the team norms, the goals and the objectives, how your team will handle conflict, and the timeline that you have established. Once this document is complete, one person on the team should submit it via the assignment link to make sure that your team gets credit for this work that you've done together. You should also post this and make it available in your team collaboration area. There's a file sharing section. You could attach it on a wiki page. You can attach it to a discussion board. You can copy paste it into a wiki page so everybody can see it at a glance. Whatever your team chooses to do, make sure that it is readily available for everyone so that they can refer to it if they need to. And as your team encounters conflict or bumps in the road, I encourage you to refer to the conflict management process or the norms and objectives and guidelines that you've established and agreed upon in your contract, and you can use that as you discuss with your teammates. I've noticed that you haven't been engaged. Remember, as part of our team contract, we've all committed to. You're not judging an individual, you are reminding them and trying to bring them back on board and keep them engaged and participating as effective contributors to your team outcomes. If you've got any questions at any time, never hesitate to let me know. Good luck in creating your team contract.